I recommend you strap yourself to your chair because it is like absolutely ridiculous. What's up guys, Ben Babbit here and welcome back to the second episode of Road Back to High Stakes. Before we get into the hands for the week, let's take a look at the graph for the last 7 days. So I'd like to preface this graph section by saying that this, 6,000 hand sample is absolutely meaningless in the grand scheme of things. That said, on 2+2 and on Instagram, I pretty much shared my results every single day and that always included a graph. Now for me personally, looking at my results at the end of each day doesn't really bring anxiety or tilt or frustration, whereas for some of you it might do. So I would just kind of urge for you to listen to your tilt triggers. If looking at your results makes you feel a certain way at the end of it, whether or not that's elation if you win and really negative if you lose, I would really strongly recommend at least try on not checking your results for a period and see what that brings up for you. Anyway, you can see that on the week I made around $7,000 and ran a little bit below EV. But if we do change the graph to big blinds, you will see that we actually lost about 2 binds on the week, but ran a couple of binds above EV. Regardless of the graph, I think it's really important to take stock of how I think I actually played on the week. And I think if I'm being brutally honest, I didn't play that well on the week. Yes, I did make some dollars. Yes, I did run a couple of binds below EV, but I think overall I left quite a lot of money on the tables. I think there was a little bit too much autopilot, and I think in the hands today you're going to see some of that autopilot. So on to the hands this week. I think we had a few too many 1KNL hand histories last week, so this week it's going to be exclusively 2KNL on ignition. We have a 480 big blind pot versus a reg. We have an absolute blow up from a recreational in one of the most outrageously ridiculous hands I've played. We also have theory-oriented hands that are pretty interesting to balance out the chaos from the first 2 hands. So in our first hand this week, we've got pocket queens in the small blind and we see a recreational opening to 3x, and then we see what is a presumed reg 3-betting to 9x from the cutoff. We then go ahead and for some reason get out the most microscopic cold 4-bet of all time. We make it 460, I think. This is just flat out terrible from me. I don't know why I've done this. I don't know why I'm showing it actually, but we go way too small. This should be in the region of like 540 to 600. Now, whether or not in position is reading into my sizing or whether or not they just have pocket aces, they go ahead and click 5-bet us. My approach to this spot is actually to play no 6-bets. Obviously this is very, very debatable and you can play 6-bets here. Just part of my approach in a relatively splashy pool, so I do continue with just a call. Villain tanks for a little while and then starts out with a quarter pot c-bet, and I imagine there are going to be some raises for out position here, mainly hands with an ace in them, maybe ace king, maybe some ace queen suited, and then some pocket aces and some pocket kings. I think pocket queens here blocking some bluffs and pure unblocking the value and being very deep still, never wants to raise the flop in this configuration, so I go ahead and call. We see a 3 of spades on the turn, which is omega brick, and we go ahead and check. Villain then long tanks and goes with quarter pot again. I think this sizing is notable. I think that the value range here probably wants to just be half pot, but for whatever reason, Villain has gone small in position, and obviously it's not bad by any means. Similar reasons for the flop. I don't really want to be playing shoves with my combo on the turn, so I go ahead and just call. And we see a relative brick on the river, 5 of hearts. When I say relative brick, I mean that now in position probably is just going to check back the ace-5 for some EV against my nut flush draws, but for all intents and purposes, it is just another brick. Villain now goes back deep into the tank and ends up shoving for just around half pot. And now we have a very interesting decision. So where are we in our range? Well, we definitely have aces here. As I said, we're on cap pre-flop. We're just going to flat the 5-bet. We have kings also. Kings is kind of a bit of a size stack off here. Again, not so much in the ignition pool. I think it's more of a call. And then we're going to have pocket jacks and pocket tens, which would have pure arrived to the turn, but I imagine some of them will start mixing fold. To be honest with you, I wouldn't actually be that shocked if queens was mixing some fold on the turn, given how narrow the ranges are. That said, I think that if we look at this in reality, I think in position here, it's probably going to be using, well, they're going to certainly have aces always as the 5-bet. They may flat them sometimes. They're going to have kings most of the time as a 5-bet as well. They're never going to have jacks and tens, and there's some argument that maybe they attack the small sizing pre-flop with pocket queens. but that's kind of up for debate. So we can assume maybe it's just going to be aces and kings for the value region. Then there's going to be quite a number of combos of ace king offsuit, and then there are going to be some probable ace jack and maybe the occasional ace 10 suited as well. Ace 5 is now discounted because I do believe those just check back on the river. So all things considered, and the fact we have a pretty good price, I actually think it's relatively easy for imposition to get out of line here. So with that in mind, I do decide to just always call the river in a spot that is very likely to be a clear mix. And fortunately, this time we do find ace 10 of hearts. I think it would be easy to say that this is way out of line, but this actually does make a pretty good bluffing hand. It unblocks probably my mixed hands like jacks through queens, and then also blocks ace 10, which probably would have folded the turn, as I said, and then blocks pocket aces as well and unblocks spades. So all things considered, it's very hard to say whether or not this player was out of line, but this time it did go well for us. Here we have pocket fives and we open the cutoff and we get 3-bet by what seemed to be a regular off a very, very small sample to a pretty suspicious 8.25. So you might argue that this is not a reg, but from what I could tell from the very limited sample that they did seem to be. I go ahead and mix pre-flop and call pocket fives. Flop comes king 6-7 rainbow and we start out with a check. When villain bets half pot, I think this is very, very close already. Definitely want to be calling sometimes, probably folding sometimes, and probably raising sometimes. On this occasion, I do elect to call. We see the 8 of diamonds on the turn, and this is definitely in hindsight a card that I should have donked, and I was tanking in game and thinking about it, but for whatever reason I decided not to. I think the main reason was that I didn't really know what sizing to go with, so I wasn't sure I wanted to go like third pot, 10% pot, so I ended up just checking, but I think in hindsight I definitely would have liked to have seen myself donk. The reason for that is because imposition gets to half pot with probably range on the flop, they're going to arrive to the turn with like kind of hands like queen jack, ace queen, ace 10, ace jack that we won't have called the flop with. So on these low connected turn cards where imposition is bet so frequently and then has like a load of unfiltered combos at the top of their range that aren't pairs, they just do pretty badly on these connecting turns, so I should be donking. They do go ahead and bet half pot, and I don't want to play shoves with my combo. I think if I was going to shove, it would probably be a hand like 2 pair, or maybe a 9-8 or something like that with a bit more equity. I think we're just kind of handcuffed here into calling our combo always on the turn. And the river is the 10 of clubs, which perhaps on the surface looks like a fairly neutral card, but I think imposition is at least at some frequency going to be checking pocket 9s, king 9, ace 9 back on the turn, whereas as the out of position player, we're going to arrive pure with pocket 9s, pure with king 9 when we have called it pre-flop, and then we probably don't ever have ace 9 either. So there's a symmetry in the ace 9, but the other 9x combos make up a good portion of my range. The other reason is that on this particular river that does complete the straight where imposition lacks those 9s, they're also going to be downgraded with a lot of their value bets on the turn, i.e. ace, king, and aces. So that portion of their like top end value range on the turn gets massively downgraded and forced into indifference on the 10 of clubs when OOP plays donks. So in game I was unsure about donk sizing. I think there may be small argument to have a small donk sizing, but I think with my combo it just makes the most sense to pure jam, and that is what I go ahead and do. And villain doesn't take very long and ends up calling pocket 7s, which they are value catching versus king 10, so they're definitely not going to fold that one. So in this hand I recommend you strap yourself to your chair because it is like absolutely ridiculous. We open king 5 of clubs in MP and we are 170-ish big blinds deep with the small blind, who was a VIP. They were 3-betting constantly with absolutely awful holdings. Hands like 5-4 offsuit, king 3 suited, just like a load of trash constantly. So I was already pretty much frothing at this point, and I go ahead and defend versus the extremely custom 14 point something % big blind 3-bet. So we've got king 7 deuce, which is the equivalent of flopping a set versus a nit in a 4-bet pot. And we do, unsurprisingly, see a very large bet, which is what this player was renowned for at the table. goes with 650 into 586. I would have liked to see myself tank a little bit on the flop. I think I got a little bit excited and just pretty much snap called my top pair. We do see the 9 of diamonds on the turn, and we see a pretty quick check from the out of position player. So the reads that I had on this player were that they were extremely aggressive and they weren't that cally. So our hand is obviously worth all the money here. I know that might seem ridiculous on the surface given we're another 130 something big blinds deep, but based on the reads I had on this player, our hand is plenty good enough to go for 3 streets. That said, that because of this player's tendencies, I just felt that I would probably make a bit more money by checking. In fact, a lot more money by checking and then bluff catching. Slash raising versus a bet, although this recreational is pretty much using all-ins or pots anyway, so it wouldn't be that much more behind. If we were like loads and loads and loads and loads of big blinds deep, then I probably would start betting to then shove the river for a smaller SPR. But given the SPR that we have, I just thought checking was going to make me more money. So I go ahead and snap check the turn. The reason I snap check the turn, so I didn't actually intentionally snap call the flop, but I did intentionally snap call the turn. This is maybe the most level 1 thinking that I'm ever going to say, but sometimes I think if you snap check a turn versus a recreational who has a propensity to bluff, they are going to perceive that as weakness rather than if you tank and then check. I think that actually induces far less spew from recreationals. But to be honest with you, maybe I'm just a whale and I'm projecting a whole load, which I can definitely accept. Either way, I check and we do see the 7 of diamonds and we see a snap all in for about 1.5 times pot, about 140 big blinds. And well, I was trapping on the turn, right? So I am pretty happy with the spot. If they have a 7, then fine. If they have ace king, then fine. I mean, they just never have ace king because they were fast playing. I'm expecting to see bluffs or a 7, pretty much nothing else. So I do go ahead and turbo snap call. And on this occasion, we have won the 360 big blind pot versus the very ambitiously played Jack 6 of hearts. So that's going to wrap it up for the hands and the video today, guys. Thank you so much for watching. And if you do have any feedback on the hands, the structure, the things that I'm saying, the layout, then please do let me know in the comments below. But until next time, take care and good luck at the tables.